Hello, everyone. Thank you for your patience and welcome to the webinar titled Implementing Digital Signatures in an FDA-Regulated Environment, presented by Perficient's Michelle Engler, who is a Senior Solutions Architect in the Life Sciences practice. We also have Tina Howard, Head of QA, and Sally Miranker, Head of Computer System Validation, with us today, and they'll both participate in the Q&A session. My name is Eugene Stefanov, and I'm the Marketing Manager for Perficient's Life Sciences practice. Before I turn it over to Michelle, I'd like to cover some basic housekeeping items and also provide a brief overview of Perficient. So all participants on this call will be in listen-only mode. This means that everyone is on mute. You can submit questions to the speaker at any time today by typing them in the chat feature, which is located on the left side of your screen. Please do make sure you state your questions clearly and keep in mind that other webinar participants will not see your questions or comments. However, your questions to the speaker will be anonymously addressed as time allows towards the end of the presentation. If you do still have unanswered questions after the webinar or would like to request information about our services, feel free to use the contact information that we'll provide throughout the presentation. And you can also fill out the contact forms found on Perficient's website. Please note that today's webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be sent to you within several days, along with a link to the PDF version. Now that we've covered some logistics, let's move on to a quick overview of Perficient. So Perficient is an IT consulting company that offers a whole host of IT solutions for a variety of industries, including, of course, life sciences. We have employees and offices all over the world, including the locations that you see on this slide. And as many of you expect, many of our clients are based in North America and Europe. So this slide here contains a bunch of facts. I'll point out a few of them. We were founded in 1997. We're a publicly traded company on the NASDAQ. And lastly, at the moment, we have a little over 2,000 employees. So Perficient offers its clients many different types of business and technology solutions, from business process management and information management to content management systems and portals. We also have a broad portfolio of solutions we work with. The services we provide are what you would typically expect from an IT consulting company, anywhere from implementations and upgrades, cloud hosting, application support, project management, and so on. When it comes to life sciences specific IT applications, we cover the data management and EDC space, safety and pharmacovigilance, clinical trial management, data warehousing, and analytics. And finally, Perficient has many different software partners, including, of course, ARX, which is the maker of CoSign, and this is the application that we'll be discussing today. As mentioned earlier, we have Michelle Engler, who is the Senior Solutions Architect, who will present to you guys today. And during the Q&A portion, Sally Miranker and Tina Howard will join us. So now that I've covered the housekeeping items, I'd like to pass it over to Michelle.
Thank you, Eugene. So I am Michelle Engler, the Senior Solutions Architect at Perficient Life Sciences. I have to mention that I live in Northern California, and right now we have a big storm coming overhead. So there is a possibility that I could potentially lose connection. If that does happen during this webinar, Tina and Sally, my colleague Sandy, will come on and take over for me. So if that happens, we lose connection, just bear with us. We'll we'll get a little reorganized and continue on. So I'm going to share my screen. Just a moment here. Okay. Eugene, can you confirm that you can see my presentation right now?
Yes, I can see it.
Great, thank you. Okay, so today I'm going to go over a digital solution and our process for bringing a digital solution in-house at Perficient Life Sciences. I'll go over the digital signature technology, the requirements that we had for our digital solution, look at the available digital signature solutions that we evaluated, along with comparing the solutions with 21 CFR Part 11 compliance. We'll talk about implementing, validating, and releasing a digital signature solution, our future plans for digital signatures in life sciences, and then we'll do a demonstration and then take questions. So as an overview and to provide the background for digital signatures, you'll often hear talk about electronic signatures and digital signatures, and it's important to recognize that they're related, but they're different things. An electronic signature, it means an electronic sound, symbol, or process attached to or logically associated with a contract or other record and executed or adopted by a person with the intent to sign the record. A digital signature is an electronic signature, but it's based upon cryptographic methods of originator authentication, and it's computed using a set of rules and parameters such that the identity of the signer and the integrity of the data can be verified. So the take-home message here is that digital signatures are electronic signatures, but that they provide the highest level of security when executing digital signatures, and they have universal acceptance. They're based on the public key infrastructure technology, and they guarantee your signer identity and intent, data integrity, and non-repudiation of signed documents. So what is a digital signature? A digital signature is taking the concept of a paper-based signing and turning it into some electronic fingerprint. So this electronic fingerprint, it's unique to both the document and the signer. It binds them together. The interesting thing about a digital signature is once a document is signed, that signature is actually embedded in the document, and that lives throughout the lifespan of the document, regardless of whether the system used to execute the digital signature is there or not. That document will be with its signature for as long as the document is relevant. A digital signature ensures the authenticity of the signer, and obviously this is very important in terms of maintaining compliance in a regulated industry. It also will invalidate, so in the case that a document was signed and then some of the information that was signed, the document itself was tampered with or changed after the signature was made, the signature will be invalidated and there will be a clear delineation that has happened. So you're assured that what it was signed with a valid signature is the correct content. So is a digital signature legally enforceable? It is. In 1999, the EU passed the EU Directive for Electronic Signatures, and on June 30th, 2000, President Clinton signed the Electronic Signatures in Global and National Commerce Act called eSign, and this made signed electronic contracts and documents as legally binding as a paper-based contract. And so today, digital signatures the solutions are carrying recognized legal significance. We're seeing them in financial industry. We're seeing them with the governments using digital signatures. So there's more and more acceptance and more use happening every day. And so in terms of Perficient Life Sciences, when we were a biopharm, that's when we started this project. And we had a group of about 78 employees and contractors. And what we wanted to do is find out, what would bringing a digital signature solution in-house look like for us. We wanted to do just a general survey to get information about how much time are we spending with making paper-based signatures, and what would the time savings be, and would it be worthwhile for us to bring in a solution and validate it and do all the training associated with it? Is there enough of a business case there? So we created a survey using SurveyMonkey, and just wanted to assess the business needs. And we were able to get responses from 53 of our employees and contractors. And so based on that, we determined that we processed approximately 856 signatures for the 53 respondents per month. And then we made a metric to determine, well, okay, so how long actually does it take to print, sign, scan, and upload these scanned documents and then mail the original document to headquarters for each signing or each signatory on a document. And actually, this is important. We often have multiple signatories on a document. And so, we're talking, this metric is for just looking at one single signature. We're assuming it's taking about 20 minutes per signature, maybe less, maybe more, depending on various factors, where people live, how the technology is working, those kinds of things. But we factored it all out and determined that we're spending about 420 hours a month simply signing documents and getting paper, routing paper to the right place, and then scanning, these kinds of things. And then we estimated that it would take about 5 minutes or so to do a digital signature, and then determine, okay, if we were to only have 5 minutes spent in a signature, that would be 105 hours per month approximately, and that would give us approximately a 75% or 314 hours per month time savings. We didn't account for variables such as where the signer is located in terms of mailing, equipment limitations, cost of materials like paper and printer ink, and also the management of the hard copies of the document was actually a significant task. We didn't include that in our metric. So you can see that bringing a digital signature solution in was definitely going to save us some time, and aside from that, increase morale, because printing, signing, scanning, uploading, it's not the best part of the job. I mean, it's one of the things that has to happen if we need to pass signatures on, but it would be nice to alleviate some of those pain points for our employees and contractors. So considering all of that, we decided to start on the quest of how what are we going to do for digital signatures? What are we going to do in terms of bringing in a digital signature solution? And also we wanted to find out which departments in a life science business unit are most impacted with signing documents. And so this is somewhat no surprise. I mean, it turns out that QA and validation sign the most documents. It was a surprise to me anyway that our CEO and president was signing 100 documents a month, and also that IT was signing so many documents. So there were some surprises in this, but what it's showing is that by bringing in a digital signature solution, we were going to increase efficiency, especially in the QA and the validation realms of our business, and definitely in IT as well. Okay, so then we looked at what types of documents are we signing. There are many validation documents that are produced, but there are key ones that we're signing over and over and over again, and these come into validation documents including GXP assessments, risk assessments, plans, quality procedures, testing documents. So all of the documentation required to do business in the life sciences realm, these are the documents we're signing, and these are the ones that would most benefit and be more streamlined to have digital signatures applied as opposed to paper signatures. So after doing the survey, we determined it would be a good idea to pursue, researching what types of solutions are out there. But before we could do that, we had to come up with some requirements. So we listed out a few important requirements. One was that the solution had to support definitely PDF, but also we thought it would be helpful to have it support Microsoft Word and Excel. And this was more in the realm of the idea that we could possibly use a solution to take our paper-based testing methodology and make that all electronic. And so I'll talk more about that as we get further in the presentation. We needed the solution to allow for multiple signatures in a document. Nearly every document we sign has more than one, at least 3 signatures on it. So that was an absolute requirement. And then this concept of sectional signing in Microsoft Word. This again was along the lines of wanting to have a solution to run test cases electronically as opposed to doing it a paper-based solution. I'll show that actually live. Okay, and then also obviously it has to have an audit trail and secure timestamps. We wanted to allow for some workflow where there's a sequential workflow and a parallel signing workflow. We wanted alerts to be sent when someone signed. The system, we use the Alfresco EDMS, the document management system, and ideally we wanted a solution that would integrate with that system. Certainly, as an absolute, we have to be able to be compliant with 21 CFR Part 11. And then we wanted to have the username and password be managed through Active Directory. That seemed to be the most logical choice in terms of handling authenticating signers. We wanted the company who was providing the solution to us to have some phone and email support in case there were issues or questions. And then, of course, the system had to be easy and intuitive to use without requiring a large burden on the implementation team in terms of training and answering questions. They wanted the system to be easy enough that there weren't as many to answer. And then having a system with a trial period always helps because then we can sort of assess it on our own accord. And then we wanted to have the system be available in the cloud, but we kind of went full circle on whether to have a cloud or an in-house system, and I'll speak more about that as we get a little bit further in the presentation. So we, after having these requirements put together, we went out and tried to find all the digital signature solutions, or at that time, we didn't really know. We were saying electronic signatures, digital signatures, what kind of signature solutions were out there. So we really opened up the lens of what can we bring in-house. We ended up with a number of them and tried to reduce down to 5 initially. And as you can see here, we have DocuSign, AssureSign, Signadora, CoSign, and EchoSign. We quickly ruled out EchoSign just based on the way that we were going to use the solution. It was the most expensive solution for us. And then the Signadora was kind of our wild card. It's built on open source software, and it's actually manufactured by a company out of Spain. And so we wanted to kind of take a look at that. But DocuSign, AssureSign, and CoSign were really leading contenders, and they had they were all really good options in our mind. Signadora we ended up ruling out based on just not feeling that it was really ready for the prime time that we were going to be putting it under, and that again it only signed PDFs, and we really wanted to be able to sign more documents than just PDFs. Looking at DocuSign, AssureSign, and CoSign, they were all very comparable. We ended up going with CoSign, and here's why. They offered us. They have a cloud-based option, but they also offer the ability to have a pre-configured, pre-installed, unconfigured appliance provided to us. And that would save us on having to train somebody or have someone figure out how to do an installation. And we actually had an actual server sent to us that was already ready to go with the CoSign application on it. And then they also, the solution also provided for signing of all types of documents. And this was the only one we found that could do this. So it does PDFs, it does signing of Word, Excel. This functionality is, I think, part of our future. It's the way that we envisioned using this tool to take it to the next level. And so, having CoSign support that was a big plus for us. They've already integrated CoSign with SharePoint, and they've also integrated it with Alfresco, but just not the version of Alfresco that we're using. And so what was done, what was evaluated instead of having an integration point, which we were hoping for, was that they have a full web developers API, which means you can integrate the solution with any system. Any system that needs digital signatures, you can use the API to access the functionality of CoSign. So that was attractive to us as well because it would allow for us to develop a connector with our document management system down the road. It also provided for client software for our power users and the option of signing documents just through a web app with no footprint on the actual computer. Of course, it allows for prepping of documents for signature, and it's helpful for us because what that means is like a validation compliance. The validation and compliance team can really have control over how documents are signed, where the signatures go, and they prep where those signatures should go, and then send it out to the signatories to just simply click and sign. So that prepping process really helps to maintain compliance and consistency in the signing of our documents. Of course, they provided adequate support. They provided a resource to help with configuration and questions that we had. They were definitely available to us through email and phone, and that was a big plus as well. It was a cost-effective solution. It was very competitive in terms of cost with the other solutions, and it was able to provide all of our employees and consultants with the ability to sign. We had talked about just having identifying who needs to sign versus who doesn't, but then having that hybrid process was less than ideal. We really wanted to allow everybody to be able to sign. So they were able to provide us a cost-effective solution for that to happen. And then finally, we came up with this idea that Perficient Life Sciences, after going through this process of bringing in a digital signature solution, validating it, configuring it, figuring out how to use it in this regulated environment, that we could become an implementation expert for the solution for our clients and have some value add to our clients, and even have all the documentation and everything ready to go. So they gave us the opportunity to do that as well. So that said, it's a solution we picked, but we did our due diligence. CoSign, ARX already has an evaluation of their solution against the FCA 21 CFR Part 11 regulations. We wanted to go through it with our own lens and just satisfy our QA people, our validation team, that indeed this does meet the regulation according to our interpretation of the regulation. So we went through it. I'm not going to go through this line by line. But I want to point out that each of these items, when you see the check mark where we identify that CoSign does provide the ability to meet that regulation, where you see the NA for not applicable, those particular items had to be met with procedural controls. And these are things like record retention and retrieval periods. These things are done through procedural controls in our industry. And so when you go through this, that's to note. We went through every single part and subpart of the regulation and satisfied ourselves that CoSign and our procedures combined were able to meet the regulations. So that said, we set up to bring this solution in-house, and so this is what it looked like. First of all, we received the appliance, and then we installed it. But when I mean install, we installed it in our data center. Of course, we received an appliance that was already installed, just not configured, and ready to simply be plugged right into our data center. And then we went through the configuration process with help from ARX. And then we installed the CoSign web application on a separate web server. We had to add a couple of groups to our Active Directory, a user group and an administrator group. And then this is actually probably the bigger task, was determining how the system could be used for our existing documents. We had to update signature blocks on our document templates to accommodate the digital signature. We had to really get clear on where was the meaning of signature captured. You have to have the full name in there, and how is that all being handled. So we went through the process of evaluating our templates against the digital signature solution and then modifying them so that all the regulations are met and that we have consistency and that the solution fits in nicely with the way our documents are put together. And then after that, we went through the full preparation and execution of the validation for the system, and that includes the validation plan, the requirement specification, traceability matrix, the protocols, installation logs, the installation qualification test suite, summary reports, the PQ test suite. So we have the whole gamut of documentation, and we went through this ourselves in terms of in order to validate the system. And there's another deliverable on here that's not mentioned, which is actually pretty important, and that was our configuration specification. In addition to bringing the system in, it has to be configured in a way that's, again, adhering to the regulation requirements. And so with that, we had to get really clear on how are we configuring the application server, how are we configuring the client, what is this going to look like, we want the signatures to be the same between the two. So all that process took some time of evaluating and really looking at it and then coming up with exactly how we wanted everything to be laid out. So all that documentation is now, was produced. We went through the validation pretty seamlessly, and then at the end we had a validated solution. But another aspect of having a validated solution is training. So we wanted to have the appropriate guidelines and guides in place, obviously, to support the application. So we made these 3 guides. There's a client user guideline. There's one just for web application users, and there's an administrator guide. And then we had to create new application roles in our training matrix. So we have the super user role and the CoSign user role, and so then these roles we had to assess, who was going to get the super user role, who was going to get the user role, and figure out, who had to train on which guidelines, that kind of thing. And then we created training materials. And so this training materials consisted of having an overview of the system provided to all users of the system, and then 2 separate trainings because not all users would use the client. Some would just use the web app, some would use both, etc. So we did one training on just the CoSign client, and that included a presentation and a video. And then we did a training on the web application portion, again, a video and a presentation. Finally, we had to look at our existing procedures, and there were modifications that needed to happen to those procedures, and in particular our controlled documents procedure needed to be updated to allow for digital signatures. And then another important part about crossing our T's and dotting our I's is to send a letter of non-repudiation to the FDA to inform them of the use of our digital signatures. And then it was time to release the digital signature solution. We had trained a group of Tier 1 support representatives, so when questions came up after releasing the solution, we'd have people available to help with those questions. We also set up an internal bug tracking system, or product within our internal bug tracking system, to just accept general issues and questions with the implementation of CoSign and track, if we made a mistake or something needed to be updated. We wanted a way to track those things so that we could correct them in the future. And then, of course, we sent out the control document, required training notification, and then finally we provided all the supplemental training materials, the video, the live session, presentations. And then we scheduled rolling releases. Typically, whenever we release new guidelines and want to give access to a system, we don't always do this time period, but a standard time frame would be 1 month after we release the guidelines is when we would give access to the system. But just because of the added value the system would bring to our organization, we set up a rolling release schedule, which meant if the users trained sooner, they would be given access sooner. So we had rolling releases set up for 2 weeks after guideline notification was sent, and then 1 week after that, 1 week after that, and then we opened up the system and just do ongoing training and release of the application to the users. We also provided, our subject matter expert provided installation support to any of the users that had completed training and required the CoSign client. And then we fully released the solution in August of 2014, and it's been a pretty seamless process in terms of using it in production, and we've gotten a lot of positive feedback about the solution. And so we're up and running, and everyone seems to be happy. So that's all good. So what are our future plans with this system? I've mentioned this before, and this is something I'm pretty excited about. The idea of using CoSign, their sectional signing feature, to allow for completion of the test cases electronically, and I'll show a live demo of that as well. We also want to develop a connector between ARX CoSign and our Alfresco Community Edition EDMS. And then we want to be able to provide implementation and validation services, and actually hosting services on here should be listed as well, for life sciences companies wishing to implement CoSign. So that said, I'm going to jump into the demonstration. And I was going to start with the web application. So Eugene, would you confirm you can see my screen?
Yeah, it looks great.
Awesome. Okay, great. So this is the login for the web application, and it takes my credentials. I sign in. It's pretty simple. If I enter. credentials correctly. There you go. Okay, so here I am. Now the solution does integrate with other functionality in the cloud, so Dropbox, Google Drive, Box, and SkyDrive. We have not turned these features on. We are simply doing it right from the desktop, and there's a lot of considerations about whether to use these functionalities or not, and I think that's truly a company decision. In our case, we're not using them. So if I wanted to sign a document, I would simply click Browse. And in here, I have a template I've already prepped with the CoSign OmniSign. And you can see it opens up, and it simply has 3 sign fields. And if I were to sign it, I would just click on Sign. I have to re-enter my password. And I click Apply. And then there it is. My signature is there. If I click on the signature, it will give me details about when it was signed, the Perficient certificate authority was who issued the certificate, my username and email, and so forth. So this document then, if I were to click Done, it comes up where I could either download a copy or send it to possibly the next person to sign via email. And that's all just facilitated through the application. So the web app is actually incredibly simple, and that's the idea behind it. It should be absolutely easy without causing much pain points for our users, and it's actually proven to be that way. So the other question here is, I had mentioned that this is prepped. This document was prepped, and in terms of the signature fields were placed there. You can use this document to sign any document. It does not have to be prepped. But let me show you what it looks like to actually prep a document. So now I'm in OmniSign. And again, I'm counting on you, Eugene, to jump in if my screen doesn't show. And I'm just going to continue here, assuming it is. So it is, okay. So this is a PDF document, and I've opened it in OmniSign. And you can see there's these options of sign and place digital field. So if I were to prep this document, I would click Place Digital Field, and I could simply pull the box over to my signature field, and I can change the size from there as well. And I could then do another field, and a final one. So these signature fields we've actually changed the sizes of our template boxes so that everything fits in. I don't have to do any of this dragging the handles. But in any case, what you would simply do is drag these things in, and then I could save this document and then send it to the first signatory, and they could sign it through the web app or they could sign it through CoSign. I could also just sign the document right from here by double-clicking on the signature field, and then you can see it has my graphical signature. I click Sign, and again, it's going to prompt me for my password, and then it's signed the document. If I were to save this document, I'm just going to call it Signed here, and open it in Adobe, which I will open and have to then share my screen for, so just a moment. Let's see here. Is this the signed one? Open with Adobe. Okay. Great, we're open. I'm going to change the screen sharing settings just a moment. Okay, please confirm you can see my Adobe, Eugene.
Yep, I can see it.
Yep, great. Okay, so this is actually just opening it in any reader. So I wanted to open it in Adobe to show you that the details of the signature are actually embedded in the document. And that means that I can send this document outside of my company, anywhere, and they can still see these signature properties. So if I click on it, it's telling me that the signature is valid, that here's who signed it, it's not been modified since the signature was applied, and then it's also signed by the current user because that's me. If I click Signature Properties, it goes into further detail, and you can see it has the date and time, and it has the GMT listed. And then you can go into even more properties. You can show the signer's certificate. It's got all sorts of details about what was used as the algorithm the algorithm for applying the signature, what the trust level is, all of these details. This is the part of the cryptography for the signature. So this is with the document. It can't be removed from the document. Well, you can't modify the document without this showing that it's an invalid signature. So that's important to know. You can clear the signatures and re-sign them, things like this. But this is basically the functionality of signing with CoSign in a PDF document. It's pretty straightforward. Another thing I want to show is the e-testing proof of concept. So once again, I've got to change my sharing settings. So here we go. Getting good at this point. There we go. Okay. So this is the Microsoft Word template. And so I've got my screen resolution set pretty low here to make sure everybody can see. So let me just kind of shrink this a little bit. There we go. Okay. So in here I've applied two concepts. One is I guess more than one. There's this idea of fields in Microsoft Word. And with fields you can set up certain areas of the document that can be edited and certain areas that can't. So for example, I can't change the title right now even if I type. But I can enter my company name. So I use this concept along with the review track changes to allow for users to actually complete test case results electronically. So here we have an actual test case. And if I were to go through and try to execute this test case, I would put maybe AE for as expected in this one and AE as expected for this one. And then maybe this one failed and I could say batch queue did not appear, logged here. I may even have a number for it, and I could say fail. And then if I go down to the end of the test case, I can select my result of fail, enter a comment, and say batch queue not found, etc. I can log my tier. And then there's this option to sign. Now what I want to show you, and this is actually not CoSign functionality, this is actually Word functionality, is that these results that I'm entering all have an audit trail associated with them. And the reason why is that I actually have track changes turned on and it cannot be turned off. So it's permanently on right now. And so it keeps track of who did it, when they did it, and I know then that these test results are authentic. They were done electronically, but I have information about who did them and when each test step was executed. So that's pretty cool. And I made these macros where you can select to have the changes highlighted by just selecting this macro. So if I wanted to see everything that was changed, I would just click this button here to review the changes, and then they would appear, and I could put them back to black for printing or for just common use. In addition, right now I've got it locked down so you cannot change any instructions. But any of us that have done testing recognize that sometimes instructions need to be modified. So in the tester macro, we set up a place where you can correct a script error by simply clicking a button. It would open up the ability to say, script error such and such should be XYZ, etc. And then when I'm done, I can turn back on the lockdown of these steps. Now that item that I added was added with track changes. So when I'm reviewing, if I want to see where script errors were happening, again, I can see where they happened and who did it. So that's kind of another cool functionality of the proof of concept for e-testing. Now in terms of CoSign, after this test case has been executed, now I want to lock down the content. I don't want anybody to change it. And what you can do is actually sign the document through Microsoft Word by just right-clicking on these preset items here. And then again, you click Sign and you enter in your credentials. And there you go. The document is signed. So this is exciting, but does it work? That's really the question, right? So what it's actually signing. I can right-click on it and I can say Show Signed Area. It's only signing this test case. I have more test cases in my document, but those signatures apply only to those test cases. So this signature applies to this test case. if I were to go in then and make a change to this test case, and then I were to say validate for my signature, it would become invalidated. And so that's how it can actually be leveraged to sign the documents. And then in addition to that, there's the option to change the scope of the signature meaning. And so at the end of the document, after everything is signed and reviewed, I really want to lock it down, I can apply a signature to the entire document, meaning that nothing can change. Not even the signatures are allowed to change at that point. So this is an idea of how we could use the signature solution to implement electronic testing without having to have an e-testing system be implemented. We can actually use our standard Microsoft Word format and have our documents maintain all that audit history right there for us as we need. So that's really what I wanted to show in terms of the demo. Possibly there's some questions. I have my colleagues are on the line. We've got Sally and Tina, one from computer systems. Sally's from computer systems validation, and Tina's from, I get this right, Tina, the compliance, validation compliance. And so we have the really great people to ask any questions about, digital signature solution in a regulated industry, or if you have any more questions about functionality, I'm here as well. And we also have the subject matter expert, Sandy Nameen, on the line too, who can answer any other in-depth questions about the application. So with that, Eugene, I'll pass it over to you, and you can
Great.
ask the questions.
Perfect, thank you. So just as a reminder, you guys can ask your questions in the chat feature located on the left side of your screen. And we'll kick it off with the first question, and I'll also ask the question as it's stated. So the first question is, just curious if Alfresco has an e-sig option in that you decided not to use.
There's some signature option in Alfresco, although it didn't quite meet our needs. We wanted to have a digital signature solution. We needed to do this prepping of where the signature can go. The signature option in Alfresco was signing the document, but it didn't do the graphical placement of any sort of representation of the signature. And so just based on features and what we needed to actually be signed most of the time, it just wasn't going to meet our needs.
Okay, the next question is, have you validated or qualified document storage on SharePoint?
This is Tina. For the Perficient Life Sciences business unit, we are regulated. So we have not in our business unit validated or qualified it for document storage because we do use Alfresco as our validated EDMS. But of course, SharePoint is completely validatable.
Thank you. The next question is, what challenges did you have to overcome to fully implement this process?
This is Tina, and from a quality assurance compliance perspective, I think one of the challenges that we underestimated the time that it would take was it seemed like a simple process, updating your templates, making sure that all of your control documents had the meaning of signature, determining if you were going to have meaning of signature applied through the digital signature solution itself or through your templates. For us, we decided for any regulatory documents that for sure we would have the meaning of signature in our templates themselves, so it's within the document. So that was a challenge, working all of that out, and then of course, updating all of the documents within the quality management system.
All right. So the next question is, have you had any problems with people cutting and pasting signatures? I'm imagining if someone did that, the credentials you showed during the Adobe overview.
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. It's actually not possible. So it's not just a It's not. I mean, you can't really copy the signature there. I suppose you could take a screenshot of it and try to superimpose it, but if you did that, it wouldn't have any of the certificate information behind it. So it's really, really difficult to be imposing at somebody else with signatures. The way that this technology works in terms of the way it actually executes a signature, and then also when you have to validate the signature, if you open up a document, it immediately says signatures are valid, signatures are not valid. So there's a lot of telltale signs that if something wasn't done properly, those wouldn't be there. And the people that we have in our validation and QA department are trained to look at certain items to make sure that yes, indeed, this is authentic and it was signed as is appropriate. And so from that standpoint, we haven't had any trouble with this kind of cutting and pasting of signatures.
Next question is there any regulatory requirement to have an image of the signature as opposed to using a signature manifest?
Tina?
There is not any, as long as it's a valid solution, that you can link it with the individual, and it can't be, someone can't falsify it, then it's totally fine. They can use either an image of their signature, or they can actually use a signature manifest. And what we've adopted here is either is acceptable. Whatever the signer decides to set up their credentials with, that's acceptable.
Great. To sign a document, I must connect to CoSign with my username and password. But how can I ensure that it is me who signed up and not someone else with my name?
And that is handled procedurally, where Mr. Sally, you have to have processes in place where your users agree to adhering to good documentation practices and such. So there's nothing, people can be deceivious and steal, and there's nothing we can do about that except for to proceduralize it and enforce it internally. I don't know, Tina, if you want to elaborate on that or if that was sufficient.
Yeah, because it's actually set up with a username and password. Of course, username and passwords need to be unique, and they can only be traceable to one individual. So it's a procedural function larger than the digital signature solution itself. It's making sure when passwords are originally sent out for the first time that it's a temporary password that expires, that sort of thing, to ensure that you're taking every risk, mitigating every risk that password information is being shared. And then also training to ensure that individuals know that they can't share their information. It has to be unique.
Okay. What cryptographic algorithm was used to digitally sign the document?
That's a good question. Let me take a look at the signature. Why don't you ask the next question, and we'll come back to it, okay?
Sure. The next question is, do you need special storage requirements for these validated documents?
That's a good question, Lindsay. In some instances, if you're signing documents with a PDF, you cannot stack those documents, meaning let's say you had a validation plan and you had, for some reason, let's say you had a document that had 4 attachments. You can't just stack those if each was signed individually because it will invalidate the signature. So you need to have processes in place to ensure that you can store your documents properly and that you're conscious and cognizant about not invalidating that signature. So that is something that does have to be, in some cases, thought through.
Thank you.
And then in terms of the encryption algorithm, it's SHA-1 RSA.
Fantastic. All right, so the next question is, for companies in the pharma industry, if we are using an EDMS to sign required documents and some are signed electronically, would they be required to be tested as part of the validation?
The validation of the EDMS or the doc? Can you elaborate?
So let's using the EDMS to store signed regulatory documents.
I would say you could do either. You could do it together or separately. You could validate your digital signature solution, as we did, and validate your EDMS separately, which we did with Alfresco, and then use them in conjunction. If you have an interface or an integration between them, then that also would have to be validated.
The next question is, for global organizations, are there any special considerations with signing for European regulators in addition to FDA 21 CFR Part 11?
Well, that's a good question.
That is a good question. Our focus was on 21 CFR Part 11. You'll still want to take into consideration some of the Annex 11 requirements, the EU Annex 11 requirements, but by satisfying the 21 CFR Part 11 requirements, you've pretty much satisfied the EU Annex 11 requirements.
Okay, so let's go to the next question. Is what do you recommend for, I should just flag this question first. What do you recommend for instances where an electronically signed document is sent outside of your company? How can you ensure that that person outside the company cannot alter the document?
I can take that one. So just based on the technology, whether the document is altered inside the company or altered outside the company, the signature will invalidate. Because it's stored with the document, it doesn't require any access to the server that was used to instantiate the signature. So in that case, if I sent the document out and somebody modified the document, all the signatures would appear invalid, not only in the CoSign OmniSign, but also in Adobe Acrobat Reader or any other applications that have the ability to read PDFs and show digital signatures.
Great. Next question is, did you encounter any scenario during the implementation where digital signatures got corrupted and that you had to correct it? If so, how did you overcome the situation?
We didn't see any corruption of signature. Occasionally we would have people set up their CoSign in a manner where it looked invalid, and then we did have to do a little troubleshooting to get that to sort out, but it didn't happen very frequently. But it was never initially a confirmed valid signature, so once it shows as a valid signature, it doesn't become corrupt. At least we haven't seen that.
Okay, next question is, what about if you send the document to an agency outside of the company? Will the signature credentials be lost, or does that only happen if a change is made to the document?
The credentials are not lost, and if there is a change made to the document, then the signature would become invalid.
Okay. So as of right now, those are the only questions that we've received, and we'll give it another minute before.
I thought I saw a question about the ability to sign a document with CoSign, for example, that might have been signed by another solution. So let's say you had a document that one group signed by DocuSign, and the question was, can you also sign it by CoSign? Does that work? And indeed it does. And the reason why it does is the signatures are embedded within the document. Where they're coming from, which solution is used to actually make those signatures, it can be any of them, and it can even come together in one document. So you also have the option of having a document be hand signed, and you can have it signed by CoSign, and you can have another person sign with DocuSign, and these things are all going to work and play nicely together. I think that's also another important point, is that this is not needing to be connected just to one solution. It plays nice with other solutions as well.
Great. And as you were asking that question, another one came up. Does CoSign handle embedded objects in the document, such as video, audio, and images?
So we haven't done testing on video and audio, but certainly on images. If it's signing the whole document, like the fingerprint of the document, and so whatever is put in that is considered part of that document. So using that logic, I would presume that it would work for a video as well, although I've not tested that out or tried it. I certainly have done it for images. So that would be something, if it was a need, would have to be explored a little bit further.
And another one came through. I thought that wet ink and e-cigs could not be used in the same document.
And that, I think, depends on what type of document it is, and the rules that are surrounding it. For us, we are allowing both, as long as the wet signature is scanned, and then we electronically sign after on that scanned document. But there may be some requirements, depending on the type of document that you're signing, that would prohibit you from doing that.
Great, thank you. So those were all the questions, and this brings us beautifully right to the hour, and I'll go ahead and close out. The slide here has contact information. You can email Michelle directly, or you can email our life sciences info@perficient.com for sales information. You can let us know your situation and your requirements and so forth, and we can talk to you about that. If you do, again, have more questions, just drop us a line, give us a call. This webinar was being recorded, and you will receive the recording in the next few days for you to review and share with your colleagues. We want to thank you very much for your participation and hope that the information we provided you with today was helpful. Please do check back for more upcoming webinars. We'd love for you to join. Thank you so much again. Have a great rest of the day and evening. Take care.